please welcome a president who actually won the popular vote, the president of the Writers Guild of America East, Michael Winship.
Thank you. I've often said of these events that I feel like the tragic relief, but so many great speeches tonight. I feel like that great line about George Goebel, George Goebel said, "Do you ever feel like a pair of brown shoes in a room full of tuxedos?" These speeches have been so great tonight, and I want to thank everybody for their participation. I also want to thank, we should thank and applaud so many of the people involved in the production tonight. Bonnie Datt and Shannon Walker, co-executive producers. Ann B. Cohen, the head writer, and all her writers. All the volunteers who put in their time tonight, and the staff, people who've worked on this so hard, Marcia Seaman, Dana Weissman, Jason Gordon, Jenna Bond, and especially Nancy Hathorn. I also want to say God bless a free and independent media. And this union will work with our writers to continue to resist, to push back, to make voices heard, and we will fight this with our words and with our actions and on the streets as we've been doing since this inauguration. This is my last awards ceremony as your president. Thanks a lot. I will not be running for re-election in September, but one of the joys of the last 10 years in office has been to deepen my love and admiration for Walter Bernstein. Walter retired from our council last fall, but remains a venerated friend and colleague. I've said many times before that I have always thought of him as my consigliere, the trusted wise man to whom I turn when I need help in counsel. When I'm faced with a problem that threatens to become far more complicated than it needs to be, Walter's sage advice often consists of a shrugged shoulder and just 4 words. Many of you who know him can probably say them along with me. Pay the $2. Get it over with. His career has been remarkable, his adventures many, and if you're someone who hasn't read his memoir inside out, I urge you to run out and borrow, buy, or steal it as soon as you can. It chronicles a life well lived, often in the face of adversity, and a government that felt the need to suppress those who dare to hold opinions contrary to its own. Where have you heard that before? Decades ago, it was done with the complicity of many in the entertainment industry, and it was called the Blacklist. And when I say many in the entertainment industry, I include this union, unfortunately and sadly and tragically. Walter's name was on that list, but he and his fellow blacklisted writers pushed back. They resisted, and in those desperate times created a community in which they helped each other find work, at least enough to scrape by. When that dark night of the American soul came to an end, those who survived fought to rebuild their lives and careers. Walter was one of those who succeeded. In such films as The Front, Failsafe, and The Molly Maguires, among many others, Walter has told stories of both the heart and mind, stories that entertain while warning of the dangers when those with too much power seek to bully and destroy. Walter, could you please stand and be acknowledged tonight? This year, the Guild East Council and the Awards Committee have created a new special award in Walter Bernstein's name. Tonight and in future years, it will be presented to honor, quote, writers who have demonstrated with creativity, grace, and bravery a willingness to confront social injustice in the face of adversity. In other words, writers just like Walter. This year's inaugural Walter Bernstein Award will be presented to its recipient by yet another great storyteller named Walter. He's the author of more than 43 acclaimed books, as well as short fiction and nonfiction, and the winner of many awards himself, including an O. Henry Award, a Grammy, and PEN America's Lifetime Achievement Award. Please welcome Walter Mosley.
This land is your land. This land is my land.
Anybody who knows what my voice usually sounds like knows that this isn't it, but I just have a cold. I think I kissed Louis Black backstage. And I got it. I don't know. But I'm really happy to be here tonight, for two reasons. And I'm, I was told that I better not go over 4 minutes, so I wrote this thing down. And it's 4 minutes, I think. And tonight is a great honor for me. There's not anyone else in my life who occupies the place of hero, teacher, mentor, friend, and a man who has been all those things for entire generations worldwide, even though most of those elevated have no idea who their benefactor is. Walter Bernstein is not only a hero, but he is also possessed of great courage, unflagging bravery, valor, and most wonderfully, pluck. He has been there when the chips were down, when other Americans conveniently forgot the history that destroyed so many during the blacklist. He marched side by side with Paul Robeson when their fellow Americans threw stones. A Jew, he traversed the length of Nazi-occupied Yugoslavia to be the first American to interview Tito. He boxed in the ring, and even more impressively, outside the ring, he stood down the FBI when they were wrong, un-Americans, blaming him for that crime. Walter has written one of the greatest scenes in one of the best movies I've ever seen, The Front. It's when Zero Mostel confesses his crime to and against Woody Allen without ever saying it out loud, maybe even without being understood, but we understood, and that is the purpose of great film. Walter Bernstein is the personification of that purpose. And so tonight, the Writers Guild inaugurates the Walter Bernstein Award. Just to put that name on the recognition of a filmmaker, a writer, a thinker, a woman, or a man who has dared to tell the truth in the staunchest, clearest, and most beautiful terms, just to say to someone, you have earned the Walter Bernstein Award, is something beyond anything that muscle-bound capitalism could ever understand or articulate. Jelani Cobb steps into that spotlight tonight, and he is deeply deserving of it. Like Walter, he took his beliefs in a rucksack and went out to find not an excuse, not some one-sided reason, not his side of a broken equation. Mr. Cobb went out to see if he could make sense of the chaos, if there was reason behind the crimes. And then he tried his best to encompass the America we have inherited from classism to racism, from sexism to ageism, from a past that used violence to control the status quo to a present day that still suffers from those deep wounds. Mr. Cobb's journalism, like Walter, and certainly his film, Policing the Police, also like Mr. Bernstein, tell us that he has not defined himself by forgetting history and placating the masses. He didn't travel back and forth to Newark for a year because he was hoping to have starlets calling his cell phone or big-time production houses offering big bucks. He did that work so that you and I could live better lives, so that there isn't some hell on the other side of town that is part of our denied heritage. Jelani Cobb tells us the truth to make us better people and to make sure that everyone understands what has been done wrong and what might be done right. A lot has been said in the press and tonight about alternative facts. We all laugh at the notion, hardly realizing that almost our entire education is rife with these lies and manipulations. Jelani Cobb brings to light alternative facts, proving that much and most of what we have believed are lies. If it's a man knocked to the ground and kicked for not falling fast enough, if it is a mother who receives a call to come down and identify her son's body, if it is a mayor who had all the answers when he didn't have the power and now has precious few answers when he does. Mr. Cobb has without ever thinking about it, I am sure, deserved, earned, and immediately made greater the Walter Bernstein Award. Jelani Cobb.
And I rise like the day. I rise up, I rise unafraid. I rise up, and I do it 1,008 times again. And I rise up.
Let me begin by saying I am deeply, deeply humbled and deeply grateful to be the recipient of an award named for Walter Bernstein, and that your example, not only of creativity and commitment as an artist, but to the cause of freedom and free speech and free expression, and therefore the cause of democracy, is one that has never been more relevant. And so we thank you for that. And also, I'll be remiss if I did not thank Rainey Aronson, James Jacoby, and Anya Borg from Frontline, who really, it would have been impossible for this project to have existed without them. And so they have my kind of enduring gratitude for the Policing the Police project. And I know this has been a long evening, so I just want to be very brief and say that I've had many different professions, but one of the more valued experiences I've had has been as a history professor. And I find that my syllabus seems to have jumped off the page these days. Because I remember that in the 1870s, there was a moment in which people became concerned that there was a group of people who were coming into the country and that they were bringing drugs, and that they were bringing crime, and that they were stealing jobs. And this culminated in the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. And I remember that in the beginning of the 20th century, when there came to be a concern about a group that was coming into the country, and people believed that they had allegiances to foreign governments, and that they could help bring terrorism and violence to the United States, and that it culminated in the Johnson Immigration Restriction Act of 1924, specifically designated to try to reduce the number of Jews who had come into the country. And that 15 years later, when Jews desperately sought to flee Nazi Germany, that same law consigned them to death as the United States refused to allow them entry. And I remember that 75 years ago today, FDR signed the executive order which began the internment of Japanese Americans. And then very briefly, I spent 3 weeks this past December and January in Charleston, South Carolina, writing about the trial of Dylann Roof. And there was a man I met there by the name of Malcolm Graham. His sister had been one of the victims, Cynthia Graham Hurd. She had died in the church. And he had taken it as his cause to make sure the world understood who his sister was and what she had done as a librarian in the community in Charleston, and how deeply she felt her commitment to that community. And he told me this over and over, and he wanted to make sure that I understood this. And I was there for 3 weeks, kind of listening to the trauma and the turmoil and the difficulty of that trial. And then I left, as soon as the trial was over, literally on the first flight out of town. At 6 a.m., I flew from Charleston to New York, and then I got a connecting flight from New York to San Francisco. And I spent most of the day in the air. I was irritable, tired, didn't want to talk to anyone. And so when I got to my hotel, I realized I had not spoken to anyone all day. And I struck up a conversation with the bellman in the lobby. He was an African-American man in his 30s by the name of Aaron Thames. And I said, "Are you a native?" Just askingly, "Are you a native of the Bay Area?" And he said, "No, I'm originally from Charleston, South Carolina." And so I said, "Oh, that's odd. I just came from there. I was covering the Dylann Roof trial." And a pained expression crossed his face. And he said, "That young man took someone very valuable away from me." And I said, "Who?" He said, "My childhood librarian. Her name was Cynthia Graham Hurd." And so I'd begun the morning just maybe a half mile from the Atlantic Ocean and ended that day maybe a half mile from the Pacific, and had gone as far as I could across the country without leaving the continental United States, and found that the contours of that evil had filled the entire space in between. Dr. King said that we are bound by an inextricable web of mutuality. And it's this that we have to remember if we care for the cause of democracy. We could outline many of the cases and dark moments in American history, but what I'm reminded of is that we have consistently, in those dark moments, found people of conscience, people of will, people of integrity, people of creativity, like Walter, who have summoned our best spirits and urged us to move forward in progress. And this is what I would like for us to remember this evening. Thank you.